Well, Somalia has been in turmoil for decades. In the last few years, the East African nation has been rebuilding politically and economically while dealing with insecurity caused by the terrorist group Al-Shabab. However, the people of Somalia have displayed an amazing degree of resilience under the circumstances. Somali author Abdi Latif Ega captures that spirit in his novel Guban. And Abdi joins me now to talk about his book and the source of his inspiration. Welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you for having me here, Vincent.
So first, share with us a little bit what Guban is all about, the book Guban.
Well, Guban is, to make it plain, is about an alternative narrative that is normally depicted in the mainstream media, which focuses on violence, warlords, pirates, and terrorists, and it excludes that image, that imagery, and continuous dissemination of information that way excludes the realities of peace building and many other things. So that's
not to deny that the country has gone through a lot of violence for decades now. I mean, for about 20 years or more, the country existed without a government, a central government.
That's true.
What is it that people missed out on that as they continue?
I think the problem has been it has been focused on 20% or 10% of the country, which is Mogadishu, the capital, and it has ignored the peace building efforts that has been throughout Somalia for 20 years plus. There are places in Somalia like Somaliland, Puntland have been, actually more democratic than other East African nations. We have 4 sitting presidents in Somaliland, for example, and in Puntland and other areas. So beyond that, for an author, what I'm concerned about is the dissemination of this particular imagery that dehumanizes the African personality, for example, and it also is very attached to the linkages of, for example, Hollywood and its racism towards the African figure. So this is why I'm offering a different narrative, because it is real. It is not. It is not the only this terrorist or warlord area, but there's a lot of hope and different ways of methods that people are
now, granted, there are so many great things that happen in a country like Somalia. There's a rich culture. There is, of course, coexistence. Even in that turmoil, people have existed together. But who do you hold responsible for that distorted image of Somalia and Africa?
I think the mainstream media. I would put it blankly, because they have not concerned themselves more so than understanding what the imagery and what nomenclature is. Because using words and in description, in the continuum of colonialism, post-colonialism, and continuing to use that images impacts heavily in, for example, the disengagement between the American, for example, public and and the Western public with their countries in adjudicating policies that are less militaristic.
But, many times we do accuse Western media, when you're talking about mainstream media, of, portraying these images. But what do you think of local media, African media? Does it really focus on the positive, on the uplifting stories?
I think there's a unanimity of training in terms of journalists, and the news today is everywhere. CNN in a small village in Somalia or in a remote area in Kenya is running consistently. So we have a system today that, yes, we do have local reporting, but you will find somebody who is the neighbor of Somalia having his information and ideas of his neighbor through aggregated media of the world. So there's a disconnect there. So what I'm trying to say with the quote-unquote globalization, there's a consumption of the same headline international stories everywhere.
Now, who do you hope will get to read a book like Guban, and also whatever other book you may be writing that could help change that perception, or at least benefit from a better portrayal of the continent of Africa?
Well, yeah, I think one thing that has to be made clear here is that it is not a portrayal that is basically for feeling good. you know.
Yeah.
But the reality is, the actuality is that it is a narrative that is real and exists and it's often not reported. For example, there's a lot of journalism today that is focused on African hunger, African violence, African, you know, pretty much horrendous imagery, although they do exist, but most of the stories lack the context that they orbit in.
And I think that is key. You're talking about the context. It's like, okay, this is happening here, but this is not all. Beyond Mogadishu, beyond Garissa, Mandera, there's something else that is happening.
For example, give you, one of the favorite things, like the Beast of No Nations is now going on. One of the favorite things about, for the last decade, has been the story of the child soldier. Now, the child soldier exists within an area where there's, like Congo, a huge contestation between corporations for resources.
For the minerals there,
So, but when you're reporting it, or people are writing about these things, they are only reporting about
the child soldiers. Nobody's talking about the background.
There's no context.
Who's behind this?
This is the problem. And so when people in the West and other places in Africa are looking at it, they're saying, what's wrong? Where are the parents of these kids? You see, this affects the African personality and continues that
and
colonial
excludes or excuses even those external forces. But very quickly, so what's your next project? You told me you're working on something and you're inspired by that kind of...
my next work is something to do with what you and me and other Africans who have been living in the United States for decades. It's concerned about the diaspora, the existential or the living of someone like me, and the trials and tribulations of being an immigrant. It is not the necessarily, glorious, rags to riches. You've come to America and you've done very well. This is a story about so many different realities, whether it is good or bad, but how that has impacted on the lives of people in terms of, just struggling to be here with accents, with religion, with all these things during the war terror. So that is the focus of the next book, which is Musa. I'm running an Indiegogo campaign because, again, mainstream publishing is not focusing on these stories. They're more concerned about the stories that...
The ones that bleed, violence and all. Well, thanks a lot. And I know you also do a lot of jazz. Perhaps next time you come here, we do some jazz.
Thank you.
Abdi, thank you very much.
So much.
Thanks a lot for joining us today on the show. Abdi Latif Ega is an author and a native of Somalia.